On June 12th, 2025, John Fitzgerald Hanson will be strapped to a gurney inside the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. A needle will pierce his arm, and after nearly 26 years, the state will carry out the death sentence for a man convicted of murdering 77-year-old Mary Agnes Bowles in cold blood. But this isn't just a story about an execution. It's about two innocent people, a brutal double murder, and the decades-long wait for justice. And it all began in a quiet mall parking lot on a summer day in Tulsa. Before we get into it, if you care about real justice, real stories, and remembering the people behind the headlines, subscribe to the channel and tap the bell. It helps us keep their names alive. Tulsa, Oklahoma, August 31st, 1999. Mary Agnes Bowles was 77, a retired banker, a hospital volunteer, a pillar in her community. That day she went shopping, ran a few errands. She never came home. John Hanson and his accomplice, Victor Miller, had already robbed 2 liquor stores. Now they needed a car. They spotted Mary, alone, vulnerable. They forced her into her own vehicle and drove her away from the city to an isolated pit near Owasso. But someone saw them. 44-year-old Jerald Thurman was nearby, making a delivery. He noticed their car. Something didn't sit right. He called his nephew. He told him what he saw. That call would be Jerald's last. Miller approached him, shot him 4 times. Then Hanson dragged Mary out of the car, pointed his gun, and fired 4 to 6 shots. She was left face down in the dirt, partially covered with sticks. Mary wasn't just a number. She was a beloved grandmother. She'd spent her retirement helping others at St. Francis Hospital. She lived with grace and dignity until that moment when 2 men decided she didn't deserve either. Jerald, a father, a husband, a business owner, a man who saw something wrong and tried to do the right thing. His son Jake called him his hero, and when Jake's kids smile, he still sees his father in them. These were people, not casualties, not headlines. People. Tulsa held its breath when the news broke. Strangers placed flowers at the hospital where Mary had volunteered. Local businesses closed early for Jerald's funeral. These weren't just names in a news ticker. They were part of the community's fabric, and their loss was felt far beyond their families. Hanson and Miller were caught days later. The evidence was overwhelming. Fingerprints, the weapons, their own words. Both were sentenced to death. But as the years passed, justice stalled. And even before that brutal day in 1999, Hanson had a long history with the law, convictions for robbery and assault dating back to the 80s. His path wasn't just criminal, it was consistent. Court records show a man spiraling for years before he ever crossed paths with Mary Bowles or Jerald Thurman. Later, something else came to light. During the clemency process, his attorneys revealed that Hanson had been diagnosed with autism, something the jury never heard during his trial. They argued it impacted his judgment, maybe even made him more vulnerable to the influence of his co-defendant, Victor Miller. Some experts claim Miller, the older and more dominant of the two, had actually pulled the trigger. That confession came too late and changed nothing. The court stood firm. Hanson remained on death row. Miller's sentence was downgraded to life without parole, and Hanson, he ended up in a federal prison in Louisiana. When Oklahoma tried to bring him back to carry out the execution, the federal government said no. For years. In 2022, his execution was scheduled, then canceled. Again. Jake Thurman said his mother, Jerald's widow, was devastated. She died just 2 months later. Her family believes she died from heartbreak. It wasn't until 2025, after a change in administration and the U.S. Attorney General authorized the transfer, that Hanson was finally brought back to Oklahoma. Think about it, 26 years. That's a generation. Kids born the year Mary and Jerald died are now adults. Some of them never even heard their names. And all that time, their families waited while court dates came and went, while paperwork stalled, while Hanson sat behind bars, appeals in motion. For the families, it wasn't just time passing. It was life slipping by, unanswered. June 12th, 2025. That's the date. The state says it will finally carry out the sentence. In the weeks leading up to Hanson's execution, the case started trending again. News outlets picked it back up. Commentators on both sides of the capital punishment debate weighed in, some calling it overdue justice, others questioning whether execution after 26 years still holds meaning. Look, executions are controversial. Some people oppose the death penalty entirely. But this isn't about politics. It's about Mary Bowles. It's about Jerald Thurman. It's about the families who never stopped waiting, never stopped hurting, never stopped remembering. Jake Thurman forgave Hanson. He said it out loud. But forgiveness doesn't erase the pain, and it doesn't erase justice. On June 12th, a gurney will be wheeled in, a needle will be inserted, and John Hanson will take his final breath. But Mary and Jerald, they should still be here. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, share it. Let's make sure Mary Bowles and Jerald Thurman aren't forgotten. Leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe for more stories that shine a light on the people behind the crime. Because true crime should never forget the victims. As always, stay curious and stay safe. I'll see you in the next one. Before I go, there's one more thing you should know. Just one day after John Hanson's scheduled execution, another is set to take place. On June 13th, South Carolina plans to execute a man whose case has haunted many for years. He called himself intelligent. He played the role of a charming gentleman. But what he left behind was pure devastation. I won't say too much yet, but this is a case that will make your skin crawl. 2 victims, 1 survivor, and a killer who thought he could outsmart justice. I'll be covering it in my next video, so if you haven't already, subscribe, turn on notifications, and be ready. Because this next one is something you don't want to miss.